As the years since the end of the Civil War passed, the flags remained in their cases in the rotunda of the Capitol building. But as the stirring words of Governor Henry Crapo faded into history, so the awareness of the significance of the flags faded and aged as well. 40 years after the war ended, Colonel Frederick Schneider, the last commander of the 2nd Michigan Infantry, wrote,
"Of the thousands of visitors who annually pass through the Military Museum of Michigan's state capitol, with but a perfunctory glance at the old Michigan battle flags stored there in glass cases, probably not more than 1 in 1,000 of the present generation ever realizes or comprehends what a vast amount of heroism, sacrifice of noble lives and treasure it cost to bear them to a triumphant issue in that great, crucial struggle for national existence, that most tragic period in the history of that country, the Great Civil War. Oh, could they but speak, what touching scenes of heroism they could give, scenes that no tongue can now tell, nor pen adequately describe." Colonel Frederick Schneider, 1905.
Over the next century, the Capitol building became increasingly crowded and run down. By the late 1980s, various renovations to the 110-year-old Capitol had been made to gain additional offices and storage to meet the modern demands of a growing state government. But rather than improving the Capitol, these changes contributed to its decline. Fortunately for the residents of Michigan, in 1989, a movement was started to restore the Capitol building to its original glory.
As part of the restoration, a hard look was given to some of the collections that the building had housed for so many years. Among those were a collection of, by now, 160 tattered flags, hanging, forgotten, neglected, dusty, obscure. Slowly, it became quite clear. There was a huge, huge problem. Only one of them had to do with preserving the actual flags themselves. By now, over 120 years old, obviously in distress from their extreme age. But also there was a problem because the history they represented was in extreme danger of being lost altogether. Governor Crapo said that these flags would be preserved forever to stand as lasting monuments. But by the turn of the century, people were already beginning to forget what they represented, and the veterans themselves recognized that. And so was begun a project that we called Save the Flags. Save the Flags has as its goal preserving the flags, sharing their history with the people of Michigan so that they do not fall from our memories and fall from our world entirely. We are achieving the goals that we set to ourselves. They are being preserved. And today, if you visit the Michigan State Capitol, you will be able to see where they once hung. In their place are replicas, simple copies that allow us to tell you about their meaning and why they're there, but at the same time preserve the flags in another place entirely, in archival storage, where they can be protected against the agents of their destruction. The cost of preserving even a single flag can run into the thousands of dollars, and we had 160 of them to think about. How to do this? We struck upon a rather novel approach, and this was to allow people, institutions, communities, clubs, organizations, individuals, whoever would want to do this. They can adopt one of the flags out of the collection and donate to us $1,000 to help defray the cost of the project.
To date, 70 flags have been adopted by all kinds of people all over the state who recognize their historical importance. We in Michigan have an obligation to preserve these sacred relics, not only to honor those who fought and were killed or wounded during the Civil War, but also to honor the larger things they represent: our nation, our state, and the liberty represented in our democratic government. The flags were originally placed in the Capitol building to lobby on behalf of the Civil War veterans and their needs. What does it mean to lobby? And what does that have to do with what happens in the state Capitol building?
Those men who came home were facing a terrible future, and they knew it. And if they didn't know it, they found out rather quickly. They needed things. They needed assistance. And the state of Michigan, they felt, the United States government were the ones that had to give it to them. They had no other recourse. And so they began to bring their message to the people who could make this happen. When you bring your message to the government and ask the government to do something for you, that is called lobbying, because of course you wish to keep your presence before the lawmakers. What better way of doing this than to place those old battle flags that spoke so eloquently on display where all could see them?
The laws that are passed and actions that are taken today represent tomorrow's history. And the preservation of our history honors not only those who have made their voices heard in the past, but also those who make their voices heard now and in the future.
The story of the flags, after all, are those untold stories, not the ones in the history books, not those dry dates and battles. What we were focusing on were those truly heroic actions that ordinary men from all walks of life were performing on a daily basis that focused under the flags and around the flags so that that war could go forward. That these stories were still out there, still there to be told and remembered, because we also discovered that these stories still had the power to move people even today, that they still had the power to evoke in some tiny way the tremendous emotions and the tremendous carnage and the tremendous tragedies that took place during the Civil War, these tremendously human stories. They still could do that. As you stand and look on a flag and see the bloodstains and see its tatters, and you know the name of the man who bled on that flag as he carried it into battle on that day and who died preserving it so it would not be lost in battle, so it would fly again. As you look at that very flag, it speaks to you in a way that nothing else will.